It's an honor to be here with you. I want to, of course, not that he needs any introduction, but the Shadow Minister of Finance in the Conservative Caucus, Jasraj Hallan, he's preparing this week, of course, for the forthcoming fall economic update, and I wanted him to be here so that he could add his thoughts to the Conservative economic agenda. As you know, the economy is a disaster. We have 40-year highs in inflation. Interest rates are rising faster than any time in the last 3 decades. 1.5 million people visited Canada's food banks in 1 month. We have 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements because, according to RBC, it takes a greater share of the average Canadian's paycheck to make monthly payments on the average home than at any time in recorded history. And there is great fear that all of the debt accumulated under the Trudeau government in households, businesses, and governments may now be a crisis as rates rise and the cost of servicing that debt goes up. This is Justin Trudeau's economy. This is 7 years of Justin Trudeau. He has given us the highest inflation in 40 years, the fastest rise in interest rates, young people who can't find a place to live. He has given us record food bank use. He has forced single mothers to put water in their children's milk because they cannot afford their groceries. That is Justin Trudeau's record. How has he done this? Well, the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits funded by money printing means more dollars chasing fewer goods, which bids up prices. Inflationary taxes, like the carbon tax, increases the cost for businesses and workers to make the goods we buy. The more Liberals spend, the more things cost. It is Justin-flation. And they continue. We see more and more spending and a plan by the Trudeau government, with the support of his coalition partner in the NDP, to triple the carbon tax at a time when home heating bills are expected to go up 100% this coming winter. This is no time to triple the carbon tax. The Conservatives have been fighting tooth and nail against these tax and spending increases. Today I wrote the Minister of Finance and told her that our opposition Conservatives have a very simple demand for the fall economic update. Stop the inflationary deficits. Stop the tax increases. Canadians cannot afford to pay any more. Instead of creating more cash, we need to create more of what cash buys. Build more homes, grow more food, and produce more Canadian energy. That means putting pressure on local government gatekeepers at city halls across the country to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. Right now, we have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7. Why? Because it takes 6-7 years to get building permits, and so no one can get anything built. We should be the fastest place in the OECD to get a building permit, and I'm going to sell off the 15% of the 37,000 federal buildings to convert it into housing, so we have more homes for our youth. We need to get out of the way of our energy sector by removing the anti-energy laws so that our oil and gas and resource sector can produce more energy here at home, and that will make it more affordable for our consumers and more paychecks for our people. And finally, we need to remove the taxes, the tariffs, and the excessive red tape off our farmers so that they can produce more affordable Canadian-made food. I find it interesting that Trudeau says that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is the reason we have inflation. Well, first of all, we have less than 0.3% of Canada's trade is with Russia and Ukraine. But we don't need Russia and Ukraine for anything. In fact, the things they produce, food and energy, are things we have right here. So if we're dependent on Russia and Ukraine for food and energy, what's wrong with this country? We have the second biggest supply of oil on planet Earth. We have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. We have the 6th most farmland per capita in the world. Why aren't we growing our own food and producing our own energy? And the reason is because the government is standing in the way with rules, taxes, and tariffs that are making it too expensive to do that. So get the government out of the way, remove the gatekeepers so that we can build more homes, grow more food, produce more Canadian energy. But none of this matters if we do not have safe streets. Our streets are increasingly ruled by gangsters and gun smugglers who are destroying our neighborhoods in all the big cities of the country. The shootings in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, the tent cities that have overtaken our streets since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister. He has made it easy for people to get dangerous drugs. He's even funded some of these drugs. And he's lowered the penalties for the violent criminals who bring the drugs and the crime to our neighborhoods. We all believe that a young person who makes a mistake in their youth should have a chance to get rehabilitated and start over again. But when we see offenders who've committed 40, 50, 60 offenses, convicted again and again and again, released back into the neighborhoods to kill our people, then that is a threat to public safety. We saw it in Saskatchewan where the mass stabbing rampage, the killers had already been convicted almost 50 times. Why were they on the street? Justin Trudeau's weak laws have allowed repeat, prolific, violent offenders back on the streets. Instead of going after law-abiding, licensed, vetted, and trained firearms owners, the Prime Minister should put the money into securing our border to stop the inflow of illegal guns that Toronto police say are responsible for 80% of the gun crime. Seal the border, put the criminals in jail, and invest in early intervention in our youth to help them avoid a life of gang and guns. That is the solution. Right now we have a 32% increase in gun crime and violence under Justin Trudeau. His policies have failed. It's time for a new approach. We need a change. I'm running for Prime Minister to put you back in charge of your life and make Canada the freest nation on earth. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my Shadow Minister of Finance, Jasraj. Thank you.
I will say that today, more than ever, newcomers don't see the same Canadian dream that many of us saw. Many of us came here as immigrants to get a better future, not for ourselves, but for our kids. But under Justin Trudeau, it's harder for people to even get to Canada because the immigration system is more broken than ever, causing more mental health issues in people that are wanting to get here. People wanting to get reunited with their loved ones are going through immense mental pressures. And on top of that, our businesses are suffering because they can't get the labor that they need in order to fill the labor crisis that's going on in this country. If we look at the people that are living here, they're hit with the cost of living crisis that Justin Trudeau has created, like Pierre said, that borrowing all this money has driven the cost up of everything. And those that want to leave to take a break can't even get a passport because that's broken too. So the people that are wanting to come here, the people that are living here, and those that want to leave are under immense pressures right now. And more than ever, almost 50% of the people, the newcomers that come to this country, don't want to live here anymore because they don't see a future for themselves anymore. And this is the Canada under Justin Trudeau. Pierre Poilievre, our new Conservative leader, has humble beginnings. He understands what Canadians are going through because he's been through those tough times. A born and bred Calgarian who came up from very, very humble beginnings with almost nothing, and today stands as our future Prime Minister of Canada. And he wants to see that everyone, whether you're a newcomer or you live here, have that same opportunity to live the Canadian dream that many of us in this room got to see, that we got to see. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you to our leader for always making himself very accessible to everybody and understanding the pains of everyday Canadians.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming. We'll be going through a list of questions. I'm going to be calling you out, so please just ask one question to start off. Once we get through everyone, at least once we'll try. If there's more time at the end, we'll start the lineup again. But we'll start with Simone from PLN first.
So recent census data show that almost a quarter of Canadians are immigrants. How do you believe the immigrants contribute to the vibrancy of the Canadian culture and economy?
Well, I'll start, and then Jazz, if you want to add to anything. I would say, first of all, they contribute. Without immigration, I wouldn't have a wife. My wife is from Venezuela. She came here to Montreal as an immigrant when she was just a small child. And, you know, our economy would not function without immigration. More than 100% of the growth in our labor market comes from immigration. And We have a big country with lots of space. In fact, there's more space. There's more places in Canada where there's no one than there are places where there's anyone. We have the space. We need people. The problem is that local government gatekeepers are preventing immigrants from fulfilling their potential in two ways. One, the slow building permits for housing means that builders can't keep up with the demand for newcomers to buy a home. It's not that we don't have the space. We have lots of room for everyone. It's not that we don't have the lumber. We have lots of lumber. We grow it here. It's that we can't get permits. And that's why my government is going to require that municipalities that want infrastructure money from the federal government are going to have to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. I'll link the number of dollars they get to the number of homes that get built. Second thing, immigrant professionals are prevented from working in their field because their skills are not recognized. This at a time we have a shortage of doctors, nurses, and other professionals. So my government will sign a deal with the provinces to recognize, to give a yes-no answer to each immigrant professional who applies to work in their field within a 60-day period based on their tested ability, not based on where they come from. And I'm also going to back up 30,000 small study loans for immigrants who need to take time off work to study up and get licensed to practice their profession in Canada. And finally, I'm going to work with the professional bodies to make it possible for future immigrants to begin getting their credentials to work in Canada before they even arrive. So while they're waiting to process their application, they can work through the modules, get their license, land in Canada on a Friday, and be at work as an architect or an engineer on a Monday. So we need immigrants. We are a conservative party, as a pro-immigration party. Do you have anything to add?
Pierre said one thing to me early on when I first met him. He said, if Canada can help immigrants succeed, that's Canada's ultimate success, period. And that's what this country was built on. And we are a part of a party, the Conservative Party is pro-immigration, and we have practical solutions like Pierre has named. But today, under Justin Trudeau, there's more backlogs than Canada has ever seen in the history of Canada. And that's causing many issues. Through our office, we hear them every day, heartbreaking stories of husbands and wives that can't get reunited. There's, like I said, mental health issues have gone up because of this. There's been more divorces that happen. In our office, we see them every day. More suicides taking place. And that's the sad reality right now under a broken system under Justin Trudeau that we call the Liberal-made backlogs. They've created this backlog, and the people that are here are getting hit with the cost of living when they're here, and they can't see a future for themselves. Some people, it's really sad that people who are being persecuted around the world, it's sometimes taking up to 4 to 5 years for them to come to this country. That's how broken our country is. And as someone who's sponsored a family from Afghanistan, I went through that pain under this Liberal government. It should not take 4 years for a persecuted family under private sponsorship to come here. And I'm proud that Pierre is so, he is pro-immigration, but he also is asking that we have more private sponsorships so people can come here faster.
Moscow from CMC TV.
Right here. Mr. Poilievre.
Yes.
As you may know, Canada has been built by the Portuguese community. Several construction workers are from Portuguese background, and several are undocumented and face many difficult challenges to legalize their status. What is your plan to make sure that those undocumented tax-paying immigrants get legalized in Canada?
Thank you, and you are quite right that Canada has been built by Portuguese hard work, and we are blessed by that fact. If I could make one brief diversion, my wife and I actually got married in Portugal, so I love the country and its people. Look, we need to streamline and speed up the process of allowing people who come here to work to become permanent residents and then citizens. If someone's here in our country, working, following the law, paying their taxes, then it is in our interest to make them legal citizens to Canada. I believe in legal and lawful immigration. People should come in the right way, follow all the rules. But when they do, there's no question we need to speed up the citizenship process so that they can be full contributors to the country and have all the rights that go with citizenship. We need to get rid of this backlog to which Jasraj referred, because there are countless examples of people like you just mentioned who've been waiting for far too long and could be contributing far more if only they had legal status here as a permanent resident or a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bala Menon, Voice Media.
Hello.
Thank you.
Our emergency wait times in hospitals are now about 12 to 14 hours across the country. I think in Nova Scotia they had to close down some hospital emergency rooms during the weekend. I mean, how do we solve this crisis? Should we privatize some health services?
Well, that is always a decision of provincial governments. They decide how to deliver health care. Our job is to provide stable funding to the provinces for health. The other thing we can do is speed up recognition of medical credentials for doctors and nurses. We have thousands of doctors and nurses in Canada who can't work because they aren't licensed, and that's why my plan to get them licensed quickly, remove the gatekeepers, and get them licensed quickly is part of the solution to make our medical system work. But the system has suffered. I think the vaccine mandates went way too far and deprived our medical system across the country of very good people who could have been serving. And now we have shortages that are metastasizing across our country, and people are dying on wait lists. So we need to work with our provinces to solve that problem.
There's many nurses who have been trained here in Canada that can easily get started, but they're also being held up by this immigration backlog just because there isn't anyone that can go and print their card and cut it and give it to them. And that's holding back people from becoming nurses and becoming doctors. There's many that come to this country that don't have that card in their hand, and they also can't even get a mortgage or send their kids to school because of that. So immigration backlogs is something that we will tackle, and Pierre's been very clear about what we would do for foreign credential recognition as well. That would help to alleviate the stress that's being put on our healthcare system today.
Next question, Arash from Imran Star.
Arash.
Thank you so very much. My question is regarding the relationship between Canada and Iran. Laws are preventing not to let people, like the regime people, come into Canada. That's good. Thank you so very much. But most of them are coming through the third country, not directly. No one is flying regime people from Tehran to Ottawa for years now. And second, there are so many people, along with their children, loaded with Iranian people money, living in Canada for years and years and years as a haven. What would you do with them? Thank you.
Well, first of all, we believe that the government should criminalize the IRGC. It is a terrorist organization that has carried out murder on the Iranian citizens, has executed the regime's human rights abuses, contributed to terrorism in places like Lebanon, and I believe qualifies under the law as a terrorist group. They just need to be listed. Secondly, we think that we should increase the sanctions on the regime. Third, we should allow legitimate processing of refugee claims from Iran for people who are persecuted, but we should not allow Canada to be a safe haven for members of the regime who use this as a place to park their assets and profit from the money that they stole from the Iranian people before leaving. And so, Canada should not allow such people to immigrate here, get visitor visas, or to become permanent residents or citizens. If they have been human rights abusers, they have stolen from the Iranian people, then Canada should not be the place for them. This should be a place of refuge for innocent civilians who are victims of the regime. Do you have anything to add?
I think you've said it all.
Okay.
I'm from Udayan, weekly Tamil newspaper. Not easy. Always you have taken over the leadership of the party, and you should take over the leadership of the country.
Thank you.
My question for you is, this question I asked my colleague Nadeem when he was interim leader of the Liberal Party, but he didn't answer the question. So I know he's Harvard economics master or something, but I don't know. But in the audience, many ethnic media people, colleagues said, Logan, it's a good question. We don't know why he didn't answer. So I am asking the same question to you now. I heard from a lecturer who came here from Sri Lanka, economics. He said the country should be an industrial country to grow, not an agricultural country. Because he said the agricultural countries like Vietnam, Burma, they are still at the same level. They are not. So I would like to know, as a leader of the party and going to be the leader of the country, what type of country is Canada? Whether it's an industrial country or the agriculture. And related to that, he also said a country should have more exports than imports. But we all can see that we have more imports. So how we are going to fix these issues, and tell me, go ahead.
Okay, so are we an agriculture or an industrial country? The answer is both, and I believe in the free market system. I don't believe the government should decide how many people work in farming and how many people work in factories. I think that we should have a free enterprise system where workers, businesses, and customers make their own decisions based on the price signals that exist. The free market is the system of voluntary exchange for work for wages, investment for interest, and product for payment. There is no central planning that can fix that, that can improve upon that. Governments that try to run the economy by force always leave people in desperate poverty. We saw that in the Soviet Union. We see it in North Korea. We see it in Cuba. Everywhere where the government controls the economy, the people are poor. So I'm not trying to evade your question. I'm telling you that the government shouldn't decide how much agriculture, industry, technology, or any other sector we have. The marketplace should decide that in an open and free economy. And that's what I will do, a smaller government with more economic freedom for the people. Exports. Well, you have to make things affordably for the world to want to buy them. Our number one net export, frankly, is oil. It is. Some people don't like that fact. It is a fact. We have I think the second or third biggest supply petroleum on planet Earth, and we have the most ethical industry to produce it. But Trudeau's killed about $200 billion worth of projects, pipelines, mines, and others, even though the proponents showed they could be done in an environmentally friendly fashion. What is the consequence of that? Well, think about right now what's happening in Europe. Putin is funding his war with money he's raising by selling natural gas to Germany. Why aren't we selling natural gas to Germany? We have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of this stuff. Well, because we don't have a single export terminal to turn it into liquid and put it on a ship. We're perfectly suited to do it. You liquefy gas by cooling it down. We have what in Canada? Cold weather. You can cool it off better than, it's much cheaper to cool gas down to a liquid in Canada than it is in the southern U.S. Gulf Coast. But it takes 6 or 7 years to get permitting, whereas you can do it in 16, 17 months in the U.S. So how do we export natural gas? We get the facilities approved. There's a business case for it. Same with oil. We shouldn't be importing 130,000 barrels of overseas oil, but we can't get Alberta's and Western Canada oil to the Eastern Canadian markets. We need to have pipelines and other projects while incentivizing the companies to grow greener at the same time. So, in other words, we need to produce more competitively priced goods if we want our exports to go up, and that means getting the government out of the way and off the backs of our farmers, our entrepreneurs, and our workers.
Thank you. You are better than Michael.
Thank you very much for that.
The other consequence I will add is that we see higher gas home heating prices today because of all those cancelled projects. So anywhere in the country you could be up to 100% more you're going to be paying, and that's even before Justin Trudeau's tripling of the carbon tax. And that's the other big consequence that gets passed down to everyday Canadians.
Rehbernur from Pravasi Media, please.
Hi, Pierre.
Yes.
So we're seeing that you're raising the concerns of Canadians in the Parliament every single day. But being an international student myself, I have seen what me and my fellows have gone through with the incoming of the pandemic in the Canadian market, and we're still coping up with the same. So, as you mentioned, that the conservative economic budget is still under process, so does it include any support for the international students who are contributing so much to the Canadian economy? And secondly, since we are talking about the budget and we are here at the Polish Center, there are thousands of Ukrainians who are stuck in Poland at the moment. And they have their visas in their hands. But obviously, because of the war going on, we cannot expect them to spend money on a plane ticket. Though there is a plane service that is going on, a flight is bringing Ukrainians from Poland to Canada, but there's just one flight, and the wait list is going on for months. So does the economic budget include any support to Ukrainians and to the international students?
Well, on international students, first of all, we conservatives believe in lifting the 20-hour cap on the amount of work hours per week, so that those students who choose to work more can earn more money, and we can help tackle the black market that has resulted from students forced to work under the table by that artificial cap. Secondly, we think that it should be faster and easier for international students who've met all of their obligations here to become permanent residents and eventually citizens. Because that is an enormous victory for Canada. If you take someone who's highly educated and 24 years old, they'll then make a 40 or 50-year contribution to the work to the Canadian economy. Third, I think we need to find out what's going on with international students. Levels of suicide. We're hearing these stories of suicide. What's causing that? Is it isolation? Is it poverty? Is there an abuse? I don't know the answer to that question, but we have to find out, because these stories are becoming far too common. We're hearing them in Vancouver, Toronto, right across the country. And Jazz, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
For the last 2 years, I served or year and a half, I served as a critic for immigration, and the problems that international students have been going through is one of our main focuses. Out in Surrey, when we look at Surrey, there's a food bank called Gurnanik's Food Bank. 80% of the users that go there are international students. So there is a huge concern, and this is tied in with the economics of just living in Canada is hard enough. They have to pay more to go to school. They work twice or sometimes 4 times as harder as anyone else. And we should be doing as much as we can to support them. Support them in the ways like Pierre said. We need to have a pathway, a stream for them to know that they can have a future in Canada in the field that they choose to. And this ties in with having a healthy economy. That if they're graduating in a field that they are passionate about, they should be confident that they can get a job in that same field and contribute to Canada. We've seen how much that they've done. We actually, in our immigration committee, as a Conservative Party, pushed to get that 20-hour cap lifted. Because, like Pierre said, there's a lot of exploitation that happens with international students as well. So it goes hand in hand that we need a better immigration system to help students get here and get a pathway to become permanent. At the same time, we need a healthy economy so that they can actually survive here at the same time and keep their talent here in Canada, because we need a lot more talent.
Thank you, friends. Just a friendly reminder, just keep your questions brief and just hopefully one question for the first round. Next question is Nitin Chopra from Prime Asia.
Thank you, Arpan. Hello. My question is, landlords or homeowners today in Canada, they are crying. Reason is Bank of Canada, they raised the interest rate 6 times in a row. What is their fault? Because if someone's mortgage is $3,200, they have to pay $5,000 for the mortgage. So if $1,000 mortgage, $150 goes to the interest, $150 goes to for the principal, and rest goes to the interest. A landlord cannot increase the rent by more than 2.5%. So where are we standing today? What is the fault of the new immigrants, first-time home buyers, those who trusted the government, they bought the first home, and today they are crying. And adding to this, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, he said I am attacking Bank of Canada in a different way, and Pierre is attacking in a different way. I don't know what those different ways are, if you can explain. And attacking only Bank of Canada is not the solution. What is the solution? Because Canadians are suffering with these mortgage, and all over the world we never saw every 2 weeks, every homeowner or a landlord, they are getting a letter. They can increase the rate once or at a time. We know how much we have to pay. But every second weeks, a mortgage is going high. And first, new immigrants, they trusted the government for buying the house. Now they are repenting why we bought the first house. What will be your plan on this? Other than firing, other than firing the chief of the Bank of Canada. Thank you.
First of all, let's recap how we got here in the first place. $500 billion of inflationary deficits is bidding up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest we pay. More money chasing fewer goods always equals higher prices. The government printed money, $400 billion of cash. 1 in every $5 in the economy today was created in the last 2 years. That always leads to inflation. I warned that we would have inflation as early as the fall of 2020. And here we are 2 years later with the highest inflation in 40 years. The government told Canadians we'd have no inflation, that we'd have deflation. And they told Canadians that we'd have low interest rates for decades. So Canadians believed them. People took out variable rate mortgages for $1 million on the average home in Brampton or Mississauga. And now, surprise, rates are going up. Well, who could have predicted it? Well, I did predict it. I said that if you cause inflation, you're going to drive up interest rates. And that is an inevitable, just as night follows day. Frankly, Jagmeet Singh is part of the problem. He supported all of the money printing and the deficits that led to this crisis in the first place. So they inflated the bubble, and now what are they doing? They're popping the bubble. And all these deficits that continue to do is drive the problem worse, because when the government runs a deficit, they're buying more out of the economy and driving up the cost of things. Secondly, they're borrowing more out of the economy, which means they're competing with a scarce amount of credit. They're competing with other borrowers, and that drives up interest rates as well. So what do we have to do? We have to stop the overspending. Pass a pay-as-you-go law, requiring the government find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. Cut wasteful programs. The Arrive Can app, $54 million. The Infrastructure Bank, multi-billion dollars, that hasn't completed a single project. The relentless growth in administrative and bureaucratic spending in the government, all of that has to stop. And then we have to produce more by getting the government out of the way so we can produce more energy, grow more food, and build more houses. In other words, stop creating cash, start creating more of what cash buys. That is the only way to bring down both interest rates and inflation.
Thank you. Last few questions to go. Sharzad from Persian Epoch Times.
Hi, Mr. Pierre. My question is that in lots of countries like Canada and China, Iran and China, with like that abuse human rights, what should Congress next be?
I think we should stand up for human rights in those countries and in all countries. Canada believes in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and democratic freedom to elect a government, and that's the position that we should take in all governments, with respect to all governments around the world.
Again, not from Hamdard Media.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
There's a referendum going on in GTA area on Palestine. It was done about a month ago, and the second one is going on November the 6th. And Government of India does not like it. Trudeau government has mum on it. What is your position on it?
Well, I'm not going to interfere with that. I believe in a united India. I believe in freedom of expression. People can express their views on that question however they like. It's not my role to tell them what they have to think or what they have to say. We live in a free country, and people can express their views freely on that, just like any other issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rakesh Tiwari, Hindi Times Media.
Hi, Pierre.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody has called you already future prime minister, so all the good wishes.
Thank you.
To Diwali, you have it already. My question is on foreign policy. October month is greatly known for the International Peace Day, 2nd October, of birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. In the whole world, as you know, that Russia, Ukraine, China, US, Taiwan, all issues, all these things happening. And people are greatly worried, other than economics and everything is they have a fear that might be possible that nuclear war may start. The question comes, when you become prime minister, what you will do to bring the peace and this tension which is rising, and people are really feeling helpless as being a common citizen. And lastly, in Britain, with the great hope, Rishi Sunak, who was a finance minister, you can say that, Chancellor too, you have congratulated him already over there. And India is also emerging, despite this, all these things, they are doing better as per the media reports too. So your take on it, how you will take the Canada to the better road. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for first on, Canada should promote peace and stability all around the world, but that also means being strong here at home. We need a stronger armed forces, and to stand with the free nations of the world against aggressive tyrannies that are using aggression against their neighbors. With respect to Great Britain, the United Kingdom, I should say, I congratulate the new Prime Minister, and I note that he is not just the first Hindu Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, but he's also a conservative. Yes. And I look forward to meeting with him when I'm eventually in London. Prime Minister Sunak is a very accomplished person, and I have no doubt that he'll work hard for his people. And what was my vision for Canada is to make this is the freest country on earth, where it doesn't matter if your name is Mohammed or Martin, Singh, Smith, or Steinberg, that as long as you work hard, you can achieve your dreams. That's the country I want here in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to hear that your wife is from Venezuela, from Uruguay, just a few countries south. The question I want to ask you, when I came to Canada a few decades ago from Uruguay, we were about 20,000 Hispanics in Canada. Now we are about 1.2 million. The different kind of population too. Interesting, in your opening remarks, you mentioned about selling, when you become Prime Minister, selling thousands of government buildings into affordable housing or housing for youth. And as you know, the Hispanic community and many other communities have a portion of our communities who are in that situation, having problems with housing, with renting, with mortgage, whatever. Can you be a little bit more specific on your plan when you become Prime Minister on this housing that you want to convert into housing for the people?
Yes, so we've got 37,000 buildings in the federal inventory. Many of them were underutilized before the pandemic.
37,000?
Yes, right across the country. And the square foot per employee has always been very high in the federal buildings, which means there's a lot of vacancy. Now, that was before the pandemic, and then since then there's been a increase in remote work. So people are working from home, patching in by the internet, and that's fine. As long as they're working, that's fine. But why would we want to leave all that empty office space when we have a shortage of housing? So I propose that we selectively sell off 15% of it, and then we sell it to developers with a covenant that requires them to convert that real estate into affordable housing, so that we can free up thousands and thousands of new spaces for young families to start their lives.
Sylvia from Ahora, Canada.
Hi. In 1999, you wrote, you were asked as Prime Minister, what would you do? And in that moment, when you were an international relations student, you wrote that to you the most important thing it was to maintain the standards of freedom. Nowadays, we have so many challenges. My question in 2022 for you is still, Pierre Poilievre, taking the same?
Yes, absolutely. That was my essay when I was 19 or something. And I said, I wrote an essay, as Prime Minister, what would I do? And I said I would work to make this the freest country on earth, because our number one strength in Canada is our freedom. You know, we have, the people in Canada are the same as the people everywhere else in the world. You know, in fact, we come from the rest of the world, with the exception of our First Nations. We all come from the rest of the world. So why is this such a special place? Because we have freedom, where people can make their own decisions, choose their own faith, express their own opinions, chart their own course, keep the fruits of their own labor. And the problem right now is we're losing that freedom. Bigger government means less freedom. It means more control over our lives. And the government has imposed the vaccine mandates. It's tried to control the internet. They've taken over more and more of the economy. That leaves less freedom and choice for the people. But I want small government with big citizens, where you control your money, your views, your religion, your speech. I want to put you back in charge of your life here in the freest country on earth.
New Canadians, they came here. They believe they have to work hard, obey the law, and pay their taxes. When the rubber hits the road, the people who don't pay the taxes, okay, they do and get everything nice, and we who pay the taxes, our taxes, more than fair share, we get nothing, and we are getting poorer and poorer. How would you do this? And by the way, I do like your video about the passport. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. And how can you tackle this also?
Thank you. Very good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be.
Not a problem.
But I don't like this.
That's okay. That's okay. Freedom of speech is a little messy sometimes. It's all right. Yeah, it was a very good question, because what we see is, as taxes get higher, the black market grows bigger. More and more money goes under the table. And we see that all around the OECD. You can put it on a chart. Higher taxes, bigger underground economy. I'm not saying it's right, but as people find they can't pay their own bills by following the rules, then they start to cut corners, and eventually it becomes very difficult for businesses, honest businesses, to compete, because all of their competitors are going around the rules. And so that is why the governments are not collecting more revenue as they raise taxes. The tax rate goes higher, but the revenue does not. Why? Because they're driving more money underground. I believe that we need to lower the overall tax burden on Canadians, so that that is one of the ways that we can reduce the tax avoidance and evasion that results whenever the government becomes excessively burdensome on the working class and the small business. Secondly, we need to increase enforcement on the fat cats, the guys who have the ability to move their money to fiscal paradises around the world that don't have taxes. They hide that money in the Caribbean and in other places, and they evade their lawful requirements. I think the government should invest more money in tracking and prosecuting international tax evasion, so that we can actually bring that money back and put it into our coffers, and then lower the burden on the hardworking, law-abiding people like yourself who are carrying too heavy a load right now. Right now in Canada, taxes take up more of the average family household than food, clothing, and shelter combined. That's because government has gotten too expensive. And we need to cap the cost of government to leave more money in your pocket and let you get ahead. And that's what I pledge to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all.